2010 informational meeting. Call the meeting to order. I was just informed that there's no City Council staff report from Deborah A. Owen. So we'll move on to the Mayor's office. I see Mayor Huther is here. Do you have something for us?
Thank you, Councilor Jameson. Thank you very much. Just a few things. I wanted to start off by thanking everybody for just a wonderful picnic and parade. It wouldn't happen without, of course, the good stewards, whether they be city employees, whether they be city councilors who were there, and certainly whether they would not have occurred without all the people volunteering their time, talent, and yes, their treasure. We had such great sponsors there. So I've also, I was asked, do I plan on stopping that event? I think I would be crazy to stop that event. It is such a well-attended and loved event, but I wanted to thank you for that. Number two, the Whisk and Chop listening and learning sessions. It was packed again this week, and I made a commitment to the public that if we have to move that, we will. I'd like to at least go through every department head before we move it, just to see how they all go. This week is Sally Felix and library, so we'll see if it's as busy as it was last weekend with Mike Cooper and planning and zoning. But they're going extremely well. But we're running out of room. They're that well attended. So more to come. Sue Quanbeck-Etten, she is the new department head. She started today, and so I want to welcome her to the team and let the city know that right now the only person who is not started is Dave Fifley, our new city attorney, and Dave will start here in a couple of weeks. Wanted to also let you know that we did have a lot of water, of course, from the rain that we got last night. Just so people understand that when we do have any flooding at all, whether it be in an intersection or certainly of homes, whatever it would be, our Public Works Department actually goes and checks out those areas to try to identify the cause of it. And as some of the TV stations reported, we did have a couple of intersections that had some high water. So Public Works was there today checking those out to make sure that if we can make them better, we ultimately do. So wanted to make you aware of that. Also, wanted to make the city aware, and I learned something new today, city councilors, that we actually do a weekly check of the 69 what I used to call tornado alarms of the city, and those are checked. And so we've got 69 of them to make sure that they're in good working order. Hopefully we'll never have a tornado over the next 4 years, or I guess ever. But if we do, you will be notified, of course, by the alarms. We've got a big event in town this week called Hot Harley Nights. What I have asked my department heads to do is that if we have a big event like that, let's go out and at least check to whether we're prepared for that. For example, we're going to have a bunch of motorcycles. Can I call them motorcycles, Jim?
Please do.
Okay. We're going to have a bunch of motorcycles actually touring our streets, going. And so we've got Public Works checking out the roads to make sure that if there are any potholes, we fill those up. And also we're looking at the homes to make sure that the businesses are mowed, the homes are mowed, so that we can put our best foot or our best face forward to the visitors of Sioux Falls. So they're checking the potholes, and they're also going to clean the streets, Jim or Councilor Entman, doing some street sweeping so that it looks good. But again, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak, Councilor Jameson, and that's it for today.
Okay, very good, Mayor. Any questions for the Mayor? Councilor Entman.
Just a statement. First of all, I'd like to, for those of you that haven't worked with city departments before, if you put on a large event in the city, they do an absolute fantastic job. The preparation for an event like this goes on 12 months. As soon as we're done with this one, we actually start working on next year's event already. And all the city departments get together and we talk about safety issues. In case of storm, what kind of safety plan? We have to have one submitted. all of these different things. We work very closely with the Sioux Falls Police Department and the Sioux Falls Parks Department, especially strongly with them, and even with the parking folks because of issues that we have downtown. So I just want to commend all the city departments. They do, for all of our events that come into this city, they do a very fine job.
Okay, anybody else?
Councilor Jameson, maybe just one more thing. In regards to the parade and the picnic from last Sunday, if any of the good people of Sioux Falls, if you have some specific recommendations on how we can make that even better, as Councilor Entman said, now is the time when we're already beginning planning for next year. And Michael Hall was in charge of it this year, and he's already come out to us saying, what recommendations do we have to make next year's even better? So if the good people of Sioux Falls, if you've got any recommendations, either let me know, let your city councilors know, or go to the website and you can just send me a note on what you would recommend that we do better. If you want a different kind of ice cream sandwich, I'm not going to promise you that, but there's other things that maybe we can do to make it better.
Okay, thank you. Seeing nothing else, we'll move on through our committee reports. We'll start with the Audit Committee. The Audit Committee is meeting next week at 4 o'clock. Right after the 4 o'clock informational next week. So it will be a Tuesday, never mind. July 13th, 4 o'clock. We're going to be covering the Multicultural Center and electronic transfers. Otherwise, Rich is going to be talking here in a presentation with a follow-up on the Convention Center report. Let's go to Fiscal Committee.
We're meeting immediately following this. Our agenda items are to review the format of the monthly financial reports, talk about legislative audit recommendations for the audit ordinance, and a policy on budget transfers. We will meet in this room following the informational.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Brown. Any questions for Councilor Brown? Okay, seeing none, we'll go on to the land use. Mr. Litz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We did meet last week, and we went over zoning ordinance, requirements for changing the zoning of property and a few other items, and we put forth some ideas that the staff and Director Cooper were going to cook down into some understandable form, and they're going to bring it back, and we're going to have another meeting and talk about it. So all of you councilors, Mr. Mayor, and the general public, you're invited to attend those proceedings. And I guess, are we next month on that, Deborah? Would that be next month, or, okay. That's all we have.
Okay, any questions of Councilor Litz?
No.
Horpenbach.
If I could just add to that, Councilor Litz, one of the things that has come out of that is the idea that we're really in a conversation about those zoning issues, and I really, for one, would like to hear more from people who are involved with those. I've heard from a couple of people already, but I encourage folks to contact us and kind of let us know. Again, it's a conversation. There isn't anything set in stone yet, so we need to hear all sides.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Jameson?
Oh, yes, Mayor, go ahead.
Department Head Mike Cooper was there at the Wisconsin shop this Saturday, and again, it was a jam-packed house. And even there, we heard a number of topics involving planning and zoning and how you can make it stronger. So definitely the word is out there, Councilor Bach, but you're right, there's no limit to how many people can get involved in strengthening this process. So the more, the merrier.
All right, let's move to Public Services. Councilor Anderson.
I do not have anything to report, as I was not available for the last meeting, but Councilor Brown in my stead was chairperson, so I will pass that to him for any comments.
We, as many of you know, did a hearing on ethics issues with former Councilor Kermit Staggers, and my understanding is that the Ethics Board would also like to be at our next meeting, so Kenny, if you can work to coordinate that. They need to come by invite, so we should probably offer that invitation as we work on revising the ethics ordinance.
Okay, Councilor Entman.
I did have the opportunity to attend the last Ethics Board meeting prior to them going into a closed session, we had a little bit of a discussion, and quite honestly, they're very interested in getting together with the City Council in a working session and discussing what it is that we would like, looking at the ordinance as it pertains to the Ethics Committee and those kinds of things. And I was very pleased with the discussion that we did have. So I would hope that, and I did inform Councilman Anderson, so hopefully we will have a working session with them coming up here shortly. They're looking forward to it, too. Very good meeting.
Okay, very good. Any other questions there? All right, seeing none, we'll move into City Council open discussion. Anybody have any items they'd like to visit about? Okay, seeing none, I'll float a couple out. Just wanted to check to see what the rest of you thought about a possible change to our ordinance that would allow people to park their boats and/or RVs in their driveways, at least during the summer months. Now, they couldn't block the sidewalk, they couldn't park it out in the street. That part would not change, but the question is whether or not you think it would be a good idea to allow citizens to use their own driveway during the summer. And we would define those months in that time period. But they could park their boat or their RV, camper, in their own driveway. Any thoughts on that? I think they've gone around and around on this issue before. As it is now, it's just not allowed all year. Or you can put it behind your house or alongside your home. It can't be out in front of your home, is the way the ordinance is written. And as you know, as people use their recreational vehicles during the summer, the challenge is to maybe have a boat, use it on the weekends. It's Thursday night, you want to load it up for all your stuff for the weekend, and you have it at home, and you pack it up, but then somebody calls and makes a complaint. Otherwise, you need to have it at your storage unit, bring it out when you want to use it, pack it up, and then go. And then when you come home at night, put it back at the storage unit and get it out. It'll repeat itself throughout the summer. So it's just a kind of testing the waters here to see if you guys think that would be a problem. I think there's pros and cons, a lot of ways around this, so I'm just asking. Any comments, thoughts? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I've long thought about this ordinance, and, I know it makes the neighborhood look nice and neat and trim, but as the owner of a camper that would like to park it in the driveway once in a while to load and stuff and have a little extended stay, I guess I'd be in favor of looking at this. One thing that does concern me, I guess, is the size of some boats would be. There's some enormous boats that get drug around on trailers out there, and I don't know what's the max or whatever, and obviously some of the RVs, these buses are pretty good sized as well. So I don't know how to do this without excluding some or including some and not others. It's it's kind of one of those thorny issues of where do you draw the line at? And I guess like I say, I don't know the answer, but I generally, philosophically, would be in favor of that idea.
Okay, Councilor Litz, thank you. Councilor Brown. Sorry.
I'm always in favor of reviewing those to see if they make sense. I will tell you, I think it was one of the most controversial issues that we dealt with in my first year on the council, and Mike Cooper's smiling. But we probably should review the history of that because it was extremely volatile. But it's certainly worth reviewing and looking into it. But we also, I think, have to think of the other challenges beyond that. There are people that have a third vehicle and a double garage, so then do we allow vehicles to be parked in driveways forever? And there are just a lot of issues to consider and what it does to the people living next door to it. So, but I certainly think it's worth reviewing, but before we start that, I would ask Mike Cooper maybe to give us a review of some of the challenges in doing that and maybe even look at what other cities are doing with that as well.
Yes, Councilor.
Could you tell me what the ordinance now states?
I think I could briefly walk you through it. It's just that you can't have an RV or a boat parked in your driveway in front of your home on your driveway at any time, and you cannot block the sidewalk with a vehicle or anything at any time. You could have a vehicle parked on the street for no more than 24 hours in front of your home. So even if you had an RV there, you'd have to move it a couple feet every day to stay out of harm's way. And that's kind of just been a way to monitor it some way. But otherwise, you are allowed to put your RV behind your home as long as it is not in front of the structure. I believe you can have it parked on a concrete slab next to your home. Can't just be on the grass, if I understand that right. The general rule is to avoid having campers and RVs stored in the driveway in front of the home instead of out at some storage unit. I think that's really the principle behind it. Well, Mr. Anderson.
Greg, I do believe it's more than just a slab. If you have a space in your backyard, I believe it has to be continuous.
Okay.
There has to be a continuous driveway up to that slab also. So, I mean, that's something that should definitely be discussed in the code enforcement discussion. I'd like to also add, especially in our older neighborhoods, you have these corner lots where we consider two sides of the lot front yard. So, with some of these lots, they're very different sized and making it very challenging just to have any kind of parking in some of these. So I would definitely want to talk about that also.
Okay, without seeing any strong objections to talking about it, I'll visit with the planning department and maybe some week get an update as to the current ordinance, and we could have a healthy discussion on a future date about that item. Okay, and then one other item that I had was whether or not...
Counselor, first,
Oh, yes.
do you want to assign that to a committee to start that conversation, or do you want to bring it to the committee of the whole?
We sure could assign it to a committee, and let me think, land use would be a good one to
Okay.
probably... Mr. Litz, are you okay with that?
Well, actually, I thought it was a service to the public, so, no, land use would be fine. Put us to work.
Okay, very good. We'll work with the planning department and get a current copy of the ordinance and discuss that then. Good, okay. Okay, another one with planning, it's all about planning these days. But right now you can get a special sign permit if you're having, say, a grand opening or a special event at your business, and there's only so many days per year that you can actually get a special use of a sign. And I'm stumbling through this, but I think you can get a little sign that's on a trailer, you park it out in front of your business, and you can have it up for like 15 days or something. Anyway, the use of that special request is limited to only certain items that can be used for the special event. And I was just wondering if we would like to revisit that to allow banners to be used for those special use permits. Recently, during the summer, it's the summer, and I think there's a lot of stores and a lot of businesses having special events, and they're using a lot of these larger banners, temporary banners out there, and they're violating the code by using these banners. But they have a special grand opening or a sale of some sort, and the other signs don't quite fit with some of the materials that they're given by their franchise. So they use these banners, and then they violate the code. And maybe recently you've all received a call from one of our constituents. And I just thought we could maybe include the use of banners for that special permit process. Right now, banners aren't a part of that, options. So it's a minor change. It wouldn't get any more days to have a special sign out front, but it'd just be their ability to use a banner. I don't really see it as a big problem, but I'm floating it out here to see what you guys think. But it would take a change to the ordinance.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Councilor
Well, I
Litz.
think it bears some scrutiny here, and I'd like to have that discussed here at some time in one of the committees or in the full council. You should so determine that. So
Okay.
I'm afraid to open my mouth here because it sounds like a land use deal here again.
Maybe with that same discussion on the RV and boats, we could include a small discussion on the sign ordinance, because I think it's a small topic. It'll be fast. And
I'd like that.
okay, great. We'll pile up on land use. All right, well, that's all I had. Is there anybody else that has Yes, Councilor
I
Urquhart.
just had one feel-good thing, and I didn't want to jump on the mayor's comments earlier, but I was really proud of Falls Park on Sunday. Falls Park looked awesome. It was mowed well, it was clean, folks were having a great time, and I just also wanted to thank city staff for the way that the whole process went. People were excited to be there. They were not upset that they were standing in the heat for long periods of time for their free sandwiches. It was just a great event. But number one, Falls Park looked awesome, and number two, it was a great event overall. So thanks.
All right, very good. Councilor Anderson, here they come.
Yes, one other thing on that. Over the weekend, we had the girls' ring neck softball tournament at Sherman Park, 138 teams, I believe, on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I want to send out the compliments to the Parks Department. Once again, a great job, and everyone had a great time out there.
Okay, great. Okay, seeing nothing else, let's move into our presentations. We have an update from Rich Oaksall, our lead internal auditor, discussing the convention center. Rich Oaksall.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. Thank you. First of all, we're going to hit the highlights of this report, but we just need a little background first. And I want to mention that Scott Kavanaugh from Global Spectrum is here. He's the general manager. And we just want to acknowledge the courtesy and cooperation from Scott and the staff. We had no issues dealing with getting documents or getting timely responses, so we thank him and his staff for their cooperation. We also want to point out this was not an audit of Global Spectrum's either their customer service or the quality of the food or the cleanliness of the facility. By all accounts, that's done very well, and this was not an audit of that sort of thing. Also, I'd like to point out that they had the unfortunate timing of taking over the management of the convention center at a time when the nation went into a recession, which we're still trying to pull out of. So just bad timing there. That recession has hurt the convention center business. From what I understand, there's a lot of exhibit space out there, a lot of meeting space. It's kind of a buyer's market, so that's affected the business or the industry nationwide. So just a little background here. The city has a lot of facilities that we hire companies to manage, and this was an audit of a management agreement. We have agreements with companies to manage the golf courses, the Washington Pavilion, the zoo, and so on and so forth. So the taxpayers own the facility, the Sioux Falls Convention Center, and the city has decided, rather than having city employees run the center, that they hire a management company to do that for us, a company with a lot of expertise. Global Spectrum started this agreement 3 years ago. It was July 1st, 2007. They started this agreement. It's a 5-year agreement. It expires in 2012. And this agreement involves basically Global Spectrum is managing the facility, and then there's Ovations, which is a subsidiary company, and they handle the concessions, the food and beverages. Both Ovations and Global Spectrum are subsidiaries of Comcast Spectator, which is based in Philadelphia, and they manage 70 facilities throughout North America. So this is a national or international company that does this on a wide basis. And like I said, this is a 5-year agreement through the end of 2012. And so, and as further background, we did this original audit was in 2008. We did an audit to see if they're complying with the agreement after they'd been in operation for approximately 1 year. That audit in 2008 resulted in 13 recommendations. And this audit was a follow-up to see what the status of those recommendations were. So then this audit was started in 2009. So what makes it a little complicated is you have a lot of recommendations. You have 13 of them. And then you'll see in the report it'll refer to the original, the 2008 report. And also complicating it is you'll see often a response from both Global Spectrum and from the city, because in some cases they both need to respond to the recommendation. As you can see, if you've looked at the report, some of the recommendations were agreed to and they've been completed. Some we had partial agreement and partial completion, and then some we just agreed to disagree. We didn't come to a meeting of the minds. You could say that we saw the glass as half full, they saw it as half empty, or vice versa, but we just didn't agree. What I want to do now is just go over a few highlights, 3 recommendations. Like I said, it could be a little tedious to go through each and every one and see the response, but at the end of this presentation, if you have any questions, either Scott or I or Mike Cooper, the city's liaison, will attempt to answer those questions for you. So I'd like to direct your attention first. You should have a hard copy of the report in front of you. On pages 9 to 12, recommendation 6, that had to do with the requirement that Ovations be a distinct and separate company. What we found is that in our opinion, based on our audit work, it looked like Global was doing a lot of the work for Ovations, and according to the agreement, the way we understand it, they're supposed to be a distinct and separate company. We pointed out that the Global was paying the credit card fees, which are about $10,000 annually. We didn't think that was correct. And also they are performing the accounts receivable function, filling out the tax forms and that sort of thing. And the way we understand the agreement, Ovations is completely separate accounting records and books. As you can see, if you read the Global response, in order to be customer friendly, they want the one bill, for the customer. They don't want to confuse the customer, and we understand that with 2 bills, one for your concessions and one for your the meeting space. But we felt like the bottom line was that Ovation should pay their fair share of expenses, not just the credit card fees, but maybe some compensation for the accounting functions that Global is performing. We did get partial agreement. Global did agree that the credit card fees should be paid by Ovations, so you can read that response. I'd like to point out on page 15 through 18 of the report, that's recommendation 10 of your hard copy there. Back in 2008, we recommended that Global, in their marketing plan, focus on maximizing the utilization and achieving self-sufficiency with a timeline. Also understanding that probably most convention centers don't turn a profit, but we wanted to see the Global make some effort towards reaching that goal, or at least striving for that goal. What we found is that the operating subsidy has been going up. You can see there's a table there where we show the operating subsidy and the management fee, and we wanted the city basically and Global Spectrum to work a little more closely there to see if we could increase the revenues and maybe decrease the expenses. We pointed out too in the report that the cost to operate the center is a little over $1 million a year, about $1.1 million in 2008 and 2009, that the city's either paying directly or that we're paying Global for their share of the expenses. So that we felt that that was a little alarming. If that trend continues, that would not be good. But also, in fairness to Global Spectrum, we point out that it's not a good time for the industry right now. We're in the midst of that recession, which we mentioned, and it's kind of a buyer's market right now for convention space. Recommendation 13A, that's on page 19 through 23 of the audit report, and that kind of goes along with that same recommendation 10. We recommend a greater oversight role by the city in monitoring certain aspects related to, for example, insurance certificates, the cash position of Global Spectrum. They were in the red on their cash. They had incurred some non-sufficient fund fees on their checking account. So we thought those were red flags that the city should be doing a little more monitoring of that contract. That's what we recommended. We understand the response from the city is they disagreed with that. And I think there's probably a happy medium, a sweet spot where you're not micromanaging your contractor, but at the same time you have to do some oversight role. And the city had made certain steps. It produced a checklist that would help them to remember or to monitor when certain things were to be done and who was responsible. That was a good step. But there's just a lot of things in an agreement like this that you have to monitor, whether it's inventory reports or making sure the external CPA firm has done their audit, looking at the insurance certificates, making sure that the city is named as additional insured. So there's just a lot of aspects that you have to you can't just assume they're getting done. Somebody has to make sure that they're being done. So that's what we recommended on that one. And that may be something that we need to look at for all of our city contracts, that we need to maybe tighten that up a little bit. We've briefed several of the audit committee members about that. We've had a discussion about that, so we may see more discussion on that for the future for other contracts as well. As I said, both the city and Global Spectrum benefit by a successful operation, and also the taxpayers benefit by a successful convention center operation. When we get convention center business, we get the maximizing effect, that multiplier effect of the dollars that come in get circulated through the economy, and that's a good thing. We believe our audit report identified opportunities to improve operations and to minimize risk to the city. And like I said, this is a long report. It can be a little tedious to get through. I've tried to hit some of the highlights here. And at this time, we'll take questions, and we'll attempt to answer those for you. Thank you.
Any counselors or questions for Rich? Maybe if we would want to hear from Scott. Does Scott
Yeah,
have
Scott,
any
I'm sure you
comments?
have some comments. Thank you.
Rich, maybe stay close in case we come back.
Thank you. Scott Cavanaugh, General Manager for Global Spectrum at the Sioux Falls Convention Center. We're glad we could come by today and say a few words. We're more than happy to be audited. Audit is not a bad word in some companies. That's everybody runs and hides under the desk. It's funny, when Rich showed up and Jeff showed up to do the audit here, the internal audit, our corporate office from Philadelphia had sent a internal corporate auditor in to check me out at the same time, and I didn't know she was coming. And I'd been throwing tables and chairs. I had grease all over me, and I was a mess. And I'm like going, I really don't dress like this when I come to work. But so Rich got to meet them and Jeff, and it was good to have that in. We're audited every year by Eide Bailey. Come in and go over our financials. This morning, we're being audited by the state income tax, sales tax, Department of Sales Tax is in looking at us. And again, we want you to feel comfortable knowing that your money's being spent wisely, that we value your tax dollars, and we take it as serious as you do when we're spending money of the taxpayers of Sioux Falls. A couple things, and Rich pointed out, we have been here for 3 years. We've got 2.5 years left. When we got here, there's virtually no information, no history. So when we put together our 5-year pro forma saying this is what we're going to do, we literally were digging through boxes and boxes of information trying to piece the puzzle together. And our corporate guys were pretty good. But there were still some things they missed out on. We were staffed a little bit heavy when we first started. We thought it was going to be doing about $3.8 million a year. We're doing about 3.1. So we've scaled back staff accordingly, because that's the size of building we are. That's how much staff we should have. So we've made some adjustments as we go. A couple things we want to point out is, as Rich pointed out, in number 6 on the in their recommendations, we have, depending on the types of events, we have a number of different subcontractors the client will use. If they want an AV company, if they want a rental company, they got to go to United Rental and get equipment. All those we try to run through us so the client gets one bill and one invoice. They only have one contract. The last thing you want is for somebody to say, I want to use your facility, and we make it very cumbersome for them to use our facility. They're going to go somewhere else. So that's why everything comes through us. We give them one contract and one invoice. That's the model that we're using in most of our facilities right now, and clients like that. They like it. It's very good, and it's user-friendly. So that's the purpose there. That's why we've gone to the situation that we have where there is one contract and one invoice. Okay, the next one. Thank you. The next one shows our gross sales for the last 3 years. The first number is a guesstimation. We took the numbers that we were given from the hotel, and then there were no AV numbers in that because they were allowed to keep all the AV revenues. So we took what we did in the last 6 months of the year, and we multiplied that by 2 to come up with that number. So there's some ballparking in there. But as you can see, our first full year of operation, we were at 3.15, and we were pretty close the second year as well after we did some audit entries in there. Those are gross sales numbers, which are good, But also, you want to look at the bottom line. We'll get to that slide. That one's not as nice in this economy that we've had to deal with. Also, we wanted to point out the direct sales tax. That number there is the direct sales tax that we paid directly, that we collected off of that event and paid to the state, to the city, and those numbers are there as well. All right, next slide, please. You can see here, you can see that without getting into all the numbers and all the hairiness here, I just want to show you what makes up our budget. If you look at the items down the left-hand side, you've got our operating contract, what we're paid as an incentive if we meet our obligations and our benchmarks that we've set up with the city. There's other operating, deferred maintenance, and capital, which are paid directly by the city. Those are items that we also manage in conjunction, working closely with the City Finance Department, Gene Rowenhorst's department, Tom Huber, Don Taborda, and other staff, to make sure we come in at the end of the day, we come in under what we said we were going to for the year. So far this year, we have come in, so far since we've been here, we have never had to come back to the City Council and ask for more money because we've missed our budget. We've made our budget every year. Okay? Next. I'm sorry, go back for 1 second. If you look at the top line, our operating contract or our subsidy that we're given directly, we were budgeted at 647. We came in at 577 in 08. Last year, not as good. That's when the economy hit us. Our gross sales were up, right at the same level they were in 08, but as you can see, our subsidy was quite a bit higher. That's based on the type of events that we did. Because we were not getting the conventions and the trade shows that were driving as much economic impact, we had to go out, beat the streets, go find more meetings, more banquets, things like this that are locally, that aren't as beneficial to the city, but still are bringing in revenue, bringing in some tax dollars, and keeping the doors going. So that's what that is a reflection of. Also, if you look at that, that gives you an idea. Okay, now we can go to the next page. I'm sorry. The overall, if you look at, CSL did a study in the recent task force that regional mid-sized convention centers' annual operating subsidies is $1.1 million. And the numbers that we just showed you were 800, or where we came in last year was 800 when we were budgeted at 640. The year before that, we were at 600,000. Also in that CSL study, it showed that some convention centers, similar size, lost up to $2.5 million per year. That's what convention centers are doing, generally speaking. If you look at Trade Show Week magazine, they put together a national average. The two numbers you see above there that CSL put together, they picked 11 different convention centers they thought were close to us. If you take all convention centers that are our size in the United States, $1.5 million is what they're average losing. Okay, next slide. Economic impact, that shows you what we're bringing in. Even though we had the same amount of gross revenue, economic impact was down about $5 million in 09. Part of that was there were 3,100 room nights from the Sanford event that we didn't get in 09 that we had in 08, which kind of skewed us up in 08, and because of the change of event mix, because of our sales. And then the event attendance was down overall. We did a number of events, but not as many people came, didn't spend as much money. So that basically is the economic impact and how that affected us. Okay? And last but not least, just to show you that we are working in conjunction. This is the evaluation we received at the end of last year from the city based on our overall scores and the things you can read those. Those are the areas that we were judged. 20 points are possible in each one of those for an overall score of 93 of 100. We're very happy to be here. We're excited about Sioux Falls. We're excited about where we're going. Our 2010 looks much better than 09, and our 11 is booming, which we're very excited about. We've done everything we've been asked to do here in Sioux Falls. We work closely with Mike Cooper, and the things he's asked us to do, we've completed each and every task. And if there are things that you all would like us to do, we're more than willing to look at those within reason to make sure that we're taking care of your tax dollars. And if you have any questions.
Any questions of Scott?
I do have a couple of them, and these may sound a little bit naive, but I think we have to ask them.
Okay.
Does it matter that the one invoice system, does that matter? And if it does, do we need to just rewrite the agreement to meet these stipulations?
If I could
Yeah.
throw in 2 cents worth here, if I might, Mr. Chairman. What we did learn is that, if I'm not mistaken, Scott, the contract that we had was a contract that was actually presented by you that was kind of a boilerplate that the industry kind of uses. Is that not correct? And then we just kind of fill the blanks in and
Well,
tweak it a little bit
actually, what
here and
happened,
there?
that was, to a certain extent, that was a starting point. Then what happened is with, and again, Gene was, where's Karen? Mike was here as well. I was not actually here when we were negotiating the contract, but there were some things, stipulations that the city asked us to put in. I don't know that this was one of them, but there were some specific things that we were asked to put in there.
I think what we had learned through this process is, and if I might speak as far as being a new person here and learning a little bit about it, is that it wasn't so much that they erred in what they did, but what became more than evident as we got into it was that we all get busy in the day-to-day operations. It was a contract that was signed. We believe that they're doing the best that they can possibly do. But then when the audit come through, it just pointed out a few areas where we agreed to disagree. They had made some corrections in the way it was done based upon what the city wanted. But I think what the committee came up with is a realization that a lot of the contracts that we have, that the city has for whether it's the arena, whether it's a convention center, whether it might be the zoo, whether it might be bus transportation, a number of those different kinds of contracts that we have, there might be a need to look a little bit more at kind of the oversight as Rich had talked about. Are we fulfilling the terms of the contract? Are all the T's crossed through and the I's dotted and all the things that go along with it? I think that's what it brought evident. And I believe Councilor Jameson and I, after following some discussion here, are going to come forward with some recommendations that maybe we refer this to a committee to look into this as we go forward in the future and things like that. I think in the way that everything was handled, I think everything went well. But I do believe, any of us do, that when we're tied up, what you find out in business is that when you're working in a business and you have an audit or a financial review that comes through, you use that as a scorecard that you have. When you're working in the business, you know what it takes to get you to this point. But we as a city council or the city, not working in that business and not seeing everything, we depend a lot more on the reports, whether they're financial statements or the audit reports that we get, to know that we're being good stewards with the city's money, that everything is being lived up to. So in that respect, I think that we need to look at our compliance a little bit closer, or at ways that we audit this a little bit better to make sure that we're getting the best bang for the buck here. And I guess that's going to be part of what our recommendations are going to be, Mr. Jamison, correct?
Well, I think you covered it, and I would recommend that sooner or later it does go to somebody like fiscal to take a look at it. We're not necessarily wanting to start a new department.
No.
We just want a little more comfort in knowing that somebody's watching these contracts, all of them, and not just the convention center, but all of them.
One thing, if we do that, which we're open to, just as long as we're not getting pulled in two different directions, that we still have one point of contact, we still report to our contract administrator, the communication. I would hate for this compliance person asking us to do this, and that you don't want to put your the people that you have contracts with in those situations. So that would be the only recommendation I would have on
It's
that.
kind of an internal audit, kind of
Yeah.
is what we're looking at here.
Councilor Urbanbach, were you done?
The only thing that I would add to that, and I guess I come at it as not a business person and really kind of a layperson in all of this, is that I think it's really important to understand that audit is a scorecard. I appreciate your explanation, Councilor Ernstman, but to understand that nothing went wrong here. There wasn't something illegal happening. There's not something going under the table here. We're just looking at the scorecard and kind of grading ourselves based on that scorecard and moving forward in a positive way from here.
And I think excuse me, I didn't mean to.
Go ahead.
Excuse me, I think where we kind of got off track, or not off track, but where we came to a disagreement with the audit committee was when we were asked if it was a contract compliance audit, and we have done everything that's been asked of us in our contract. There were some things that we needed to address. The credit card fees was a great example of why we welcome this. We had missed that. That was something that was pointed out. That's been corrected. And that was an oversight on my part, and I will take full responsibility for that. But in the same breath, when it says in a marketing, you need to turn in a marketing plan, and we turn in a marketing plan, and it says items A, B, C, and D should be in that. And we submit that marketing plan in a timely manner, and it says A, B, C, and those things are in there. We feel we're in compliance. And then to get something else that says, well, you should be doing this. Well, now, that kind of takes me and makes me look like I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, when that's a recommendation, which is what it says, a recommendation, but just the way it's presented sometimes kind of paints us in a bad light, I think. So.
If I could just add into that, the audit committee does oftentimes make recommendations because they're in the thick of it. They're analyzing the business process from inside and out, and they see opportunities. And I know that they're duly noted as just purely recommendations. I'll make a recommendation to the audit committee that we maybe soften that up a little bit so you don't get hammered so much from your boss.
Okay. Thank you. The other thing is sometimes how it comes. If it comes from the audit committee, and then when we did our responses to the original 08 audit, and then to be honest with you, I wasn't sure how the audit committee worked, and that whole process was very new to us, and it was very confusing because we got these recommendations, we did our responses, and we turned them into Mike and his staff. They made their responses, and they were in agreement. I thought it was all done. Okay, we're done, because I thought the audit committee was working, was part of Mike. So then to get it back a year and a half later, I'm going, wait, where did this come from? What is going on? So that would be helpful to the companies that you're auditing as well, is explain the process to them up front. I know Mike and Rich and his staff were being pulled in about 85 different directions. I know we're not the only people that he has to deal with, but I think that would be very helpful for us as well.
We'll probably come back to Rich to maybe follow up, but let's answer some more Councilor questions. Councilor Litz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In regards to Councilor Erpenbach's first question about the single billing, I was here when Scott first arrived on the scene, and I too was pretty green back then. But I remember being shocked that we had 4 different entities that were billing people for having an event out there. It could have been up to 4 separate bills, and for lack of a better analogy, I guess it's like getting billed from the hospital. You just keep getting these things, and that was one of the things that Scott, we made it very important to Scott that he do was get one bill out there, minimize this billing process, so people had a lot easier time getting things done instead of negotiating with 3 or 4 different entities, just dealing with one. So, in defense of Scott, I guess that was one of the marching orders that the city council at the time laid on him, and I think he's complied on it. But also in defense of Rich, I understand where he's coming from in these things, and I look at this, and I've been listening, and I think much more has been made of this than probably needed to be. Like I said, there's nothing bad happened from this audit. It's a very confident auditor having some opinions about some things, and some of them just aren't practical on the face of it, while other ones have been complied to. So I just wanted to address Michelle's original question. Okay.
Then if I could just clarify that, Councilor Litz, I appreciate that too, because what then you're saying is that the council told Scott to violate the terms of the contract.
Well, I don't think the contract had even been drawn up, and I don't know if we told him that. We just told him what we wanted to have done.
But our audit recommendations say that Scott needs to be sending out separate invoices because our agreement says that, correct?
I'm sorry. I apologize for interrupting
No,
again.
explain.
One of those things I think it says, and again, Rich, you can help me here too, and Mike, we got all kinds of backup here, is it says that there should be 2 separate set of books in accounting situations is what it states. And we have that right now. Ovations has their own set of accounting. And the recommendation was also that we should be Ovation should compensate us for what we're doing for them. But the point is if Ovations was sending their own bill out, we would have to do the same amount of work because we have to know how much they're billing because I got to get my commissions from Ovations. So there is no additional workload that we're doing because of that. And they have their own separate accounts. They have to write me a check after I write them a check, which is silly in my mind, that common sense, that layperson thing. But we do that to keep that stuff separate. But I think that's where it comes in, is when one check comes into the building and it looks like there's one check, well, it has to go into 2 separate accounts. How does that all transpire? And I think that's where the confusions come from.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. We weren't suggesting you have 2 invoices, one from Ovations and one from...
Okay, super. Because I've been involved with conventions. Thanks, I don't need 14 bills.
Okay, Councilor Aguilar.
Either one of you, can you tell me where we stand with the credit card fees? In
Those
one
are-
part of the report, it says that we're going to negotiate. The other says that
No,
they
we're just
feel-
doing it. Ovations is paying their part. We're paying our part. That's done.
But the past fees, then, that's the part that was going to be negotiated, or how is that
I don't know if
going?
past fees have been addressed. I know from this point forward, they're paying their own, but going back to '07, I'm not sure what the status is of that, so.
And so who's responsible for looking into that? I mean, to negotiate it or to determine that we're just starting from this point forward?
It'd be up to the city, I guess. Audit, obviously, we just make recommendations. It's up to the city if they want to pursue that. But from this point forward, or whenever that date was, the credit card fees were being paid by Ovations and are being paid, so.
Okay, and then my second question is, where do you go from here? As far as there are still recommendations, will there be another follow-up audit, or will that come from a request from the council, or?
I guess at this point, we'll defer to the council what follow-up actions you would want from us. Like I said, the agreement's another 2.5 years, and then that'll expire. So it's, I guess we're working for the council, or when the audit committee directs us with it.
Thank you.
That was going to be my next question, too.
Councilor Rolfing.
Yes, Scott. Don't move away.
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay, so don't call me sir. It makes me feel old. Let's end on a good note. It appears that things are moving around in fairly positive matter, and that they're, even though we can't agree, we sometimes agree to disagree, and that no money's lost or anything like that. So tell us about. You said there's some real positive things happening in 211. Tell me about those.
What we have a lot of events that are every other year or every 3 years. We started this year out about $400,000 on the books less than we started on the books last year. And when your gross sales are $3.1 million, that's a substantial amount of money. Makes our staff work harder. We're going to, Krista, 3.1? Look at it. I think she can do it. We got a lot of work to do. But starting out for next year, we're above that number. We've got the Republican South Dakota, that's in 12. But we have A&I products, for example. We did, last year in 09, we did a wedding in June. And there just happened to be a couple there at the wedding who said, this is a nice place. We love the way the food was great. We love the presentation. They booked a contract in June or July for December of last year. There was A&I products. They do a lot of the implement equipment that goes with John Deere tractors. It grossed $180,000 for us in December.
One wedding?
Don't
wedding. Tell that to my daughter.
Exactly. Invite the right people.
Or my wife.
The wedding didn't bring that in.
Oh.
They brought their trade show because they had a good experience at the wedding.
Okay.
No,
Thank
so
goodness.
The wedding's not going to cost you that much. But they are coming back in 2011, Rex. So that's another, again, $180,000 for one event in December. That really helps our Christmas party market in time of year. So those are the kinds of things that we're looking for, that repeat business, and we get a lot of that. And a lot of these events, they'll go here, they'll go to Rapid City, but they like to come back to Sioux Falls. So.
Super. Thank you.
You bet.
That's the way to end it.
Councilor Brown.
First off, thank you, Scott, for being here. And I just want to say, as a business person that uses the facility, I have great confidence in what you've done. You've really made it very customer-focused, so thank you for that. But I think we as a council also need to take his recommendation in terms of how we move forward with this contract or others. I would hope, as Scott says, that we don't get them pulled between two city departments. I think we have directors that are paid very well, and we need to hold them accountable for managing these contracts. And I think that that's the route we should look at. Let's not make Scott or every other one go through some sort of a controller or some other person in city government that also has to be brought up to speed. Those directors should know these contracts inside and out and be held accountable for managing them. If they're not doing a good job of it, then they need to answer to us.
Okay, Mayor Huther.
Rich, if I could ask you, in my 25 years of being in corporate America, we were audited all the time. We used to, whenever the audit was completed, we had exceptions, we had errors, and then we had recommendations. Mm-hmm. What do you do in city government?
Well, we're not quite that formal. Usually we just have our audit recommendations, and then we follow up on those to see if they've been addressed.
Do you prioritize your recommendations versus this is a high priority one or one with severe risk versus one with low risk?
Well, we haven't done that, and I think it's mainly because we haven't run across any severe risk. I think it would be a case of a judgment call if we thought it was a severe risk that we bring that to the immediate attention of the audit committee and saying this needs to be addressed like this week. But I think for the future, that may be a topic of discussion with the audit committee if we want to prioritize audit findings and recommendations.
And Rich, I would highly urge you, or at least urge the city council to consider that, because then you can evaluate these 13 recommendations to determine how good or how bad a shape we're in. Because, again, when you look at 13 recommendations, you're the sky is falling, when in reality, it's not. That would be recommendation number one. And then, Councilor Brown, I want to thank you, because you're exactly right. Now, what normally happens in business is that you allow the business entity or the liaison who's working with that business entity to go back now and either put target dates in terms of when they're going to fix these, then allow them to hit those target dates or miss them. But again, the accountability goes back on the business entity and the department head to manage that, and we'll do just that. I wouldn't recommend putting together another committee or another body to tackle this particular audit or any other audit. I think you let the process work. And then next year, Rich, I don't know if you're going to audit them again.
Like I said, we haven't started planning for next year, but if we sense that the committee or the council wants us, we can go back and follow up again. But
okay. Well, I think the process is working. When one of the other reasons why I'd urge you to have either exceptions, errors, and recommendations, or verify the level of the recommendation is that I think then it'll help us manage the press as well.
Yes.
Not that we want to tell the Argus Leader or Kello or KDLT or KSFY what to report on, but I think it'll help the public understand that having this business audited is a good thing. And that's how they started when I was in business, I wanted my department to be audited because I wanted them to find recommendations and mistakes prior to the press or 60 Minutes or some I.D. Bailey or whoever it would be find it. And in this case, I think it kind of got out of hand. And I think the spirit was good, and then I think, oh my gosh, it was like the sky is falling when in reality it wasn't. So we'll keep working through the process, and again, to the City Council, thanks for allowing us the opportunity to improve this as well.
Councilor Intiman.
Yeah. And again, thanks, Rich, and thanks, Scott. I appreciate it. And you're right, Mayor. In no way was I inferring that we start another committee. I do, however, believe that there are recommendations that need to come from the audit or from the fiscal community as far as recommendations that city departments might follow. We talked about the checklist that they have as one of those things. I mean, compliance on the insurance was one of those things that should be followed through. All the additional insurance puts us in a real bad liability issue as part of the city. We need to make sure that those policies are signed and that they are on there. So it's things like that we need to possibly look at what the process is and maybe make some additional recommendations, especially coming from the outside. I think it's important that we do that. And I think the audit committee has done a good job, and I think through the audit committee and Rich and his team, we can come up with some of those additional recommendations, Mr. Mayor.
And just to follow up, thank you, Councilor Jameson. As I've got into this, one of the things I found out is that, my gosh, we do have a lot of contracts, more than what I thought. And to be honest, the way that we've had them managed, we've got one body that's managing a lot of contracts, or one entity, and I need to spread that wealth so that they have an ability to actually succeed versus being set up to fail. And I'm working on that now.
Councilor Anderson, did you have something?
No.
Anybody else? Okay, well, this is the discussion that we always like to have, and to make things better and move the process along to a better place.
All right, Rich and I are going golfing.
yeah,
All right, you guys are buddies?
Appreciate that.
yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rich. All right, seeing nothing else, we'll move on to our next presentation with Don Kearney, an update on our wildlife management plan. Don, thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council members. Don Kearney with Parks and Recreation. This is somewhat informal, just to kind of bring you up to speed on our first wildlife management plan, what I'll call a steering committee of sorts, that we had last week. We have several representatives from not only the airport, but the golf courses. We had city stormwater engineering staff that were present because they manage a lot of our detention ponds, which obviously are attractive to geese. Animal control representatives were there. We had our regional manager from Game Fish and Parks was in attendance and actually talked about other potential folks that might have a role to help us be able to implement a wildlife management plan. One of the things that Councilman Jameson actually spearheaded the idea of getting together along with the support from the mayor to move forward to be a little more proactive about managing wildlife. Obviously, some of the concerns and the initial concerns of Councilmember Jameson was aviation safety. Obviously, when we have the amount of commercial traffic and the air guard traffic, certainly is a concern and has been for quite some time. And so I think that really prompted it. But one of the things that we hear from our partners at Game Fish and Parks is that we think the wildlife thing is probably the most significant issue that we're dealing with currently. There are other issues and other wildlife that we do have in Sioux Falls that need to be managed, namely the deer, skunks, raccoons. It's kind of interesting to hear about what all the other partners that were at the table last week had to say about the types of creatures they deal with. We have beaver, for example, that we deal with along the riverfront and the greenway system, and property owners planting a new 2-inch tree, and then all of a sudden in the morning it's not there anymore. It's out in the river. So there are some challenges there. And one of the other things I think that we found as we talked as a group is that we all deal with it in some respects. Animal control has a significant piece. We have a piece. Game Fish and Parks obviously has a much broader perspective. And I think one of the things we found is that if we all try to chip in and work together and communicate and coordinate, I think we can really put together a good plan that will address the wildlife issue, the waterfowl, and some of the other animals we've talked about here just a little bit ago. The other thing I'd tell you is that I think we identified, looking at other cities of our size, if they have a wildlife management plan, so they're not reinventing the wheel. If somebody's done it out there and it's been working well, obviously we'd want to take advantage of that. The other thing I'd tell you is that this plan is really intended to work in harmony with the wildlife. I think those of us that live in the Midwest, lots of us like to hunt and fish and really appreciate the wildlife in our community, but at the same time, we know that they can also become a nuisance and really get to be a management problem for us. We talked about aviation safety, but we also talked about property damages that we experience at the courses, the health and sanitation of our public places with all the bird droppings, for example. We've had complaints of people using the bike drill, getting chased by geese and aggressive geese, and so that can be an issue from time to time. And then obviously with the deer, the vehicle and the accident reports that we get as a result of the deer, which is really a statewide and a Midwest issue as a general rule. And so I thought it was a very good meeting. We plan to meet again monthly to continue to talk about what we can do to put a plan together that addresses all the challenges we have. And the other thing we thought about is having a network so that if you call about a wildlife issue, that you know where to direct that question to. For example, we'll get calls, for example, where do I get my hunting license? Well, the city doesn't issue those, obviously, but we know where to direct that phone call. Same is true with wildlife nuisance issues. I've got a skunk in my backyard, or I've got pigeon problems, and turkey vultures came up as a potential problem that needs to be dealt with that we hadn't anticipated. And so I think that was all a really good discussion, and we plan to meet monthly. And I would defer to Councilmember Jameson if you had anything else to add about the results of that meeting.
It was a great group of people coming together to address an issue, and there is an urgency about carving out a space and some rules for the deer that need to be managed come in the fall. The geese work in a cycle that we'll address them next, but I think our urgent matter is to allow the Game Fish and Parks to manage some of those deer within the city limits in a way that is interactive with citizens who want to participate, and is effective in eliminating a hazard to the community. So look for this to maybe come in pieces, but we know that there's going to be a lot of public input, would be the way to say this, I guess, a lot of healthy discussion about this issue. So we want to take it a little slow, but we also want to manage this appropriately so that we can address the upcoming concerns as they come.
Yeah.
But
And we're open to suggestions from any concerns you happen to get as council members or as the mayor's office gets. Certainly feel free to forward those on, because we'd like to bring it all under one plan so that if you have a question, it'll be, ultimately hopefully adopted by the council if it's in an ordinance form. But we certainly want to try to put together the best plan we can as a group.
the process here is going to be that Don and the people from this committee will work together to find an ordinance that has been done before in other communities that addresses maybe collectively all of our issues that we have here, and we'll bring it forward with some healthy timelines to allow a lot of discussion and public input. In the end, it's meant to provide safety, and that's foremost. And then there'll be nuisances that'll be handled as well.
Right.
But there'll be plenty of discussion to occur and lots of participation. It may wind up back at land use or some other committee. But yeah, any comments or thoughts, feel free to communicate with Don or myself, and look for other upcoming meetings as well. Yes?
I just had one offer that if you need a test plot for rabbit abatement programs, Councilor Brown and myself, we would both offer our yards as test plots.
Yeah, that came up too,
Rabbits,
actually. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Don. Anybody, any questions for Don?
Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Yep.
All right. Anything else? Anybody have any thoughts that came to mind before we adjourn? Did you all receive the meeting notes that Councilor Aguilar sent out regarding our leadership meetings with the mayor and the department heads? Was that very good? Okay. Councilor Litz?
I'd just like to say those notes are everything I'd hoped they'd be. They're very informative, and I really, truly appreciate you guys displaying your leadership in such a fashion.
Well, just to be clear, you should know it's not me. It's all Sue. If it were me, you'd just get a verbal update, and I'd probably forget part of it. But it's Sue, so Sue is doing the work. All right. If I don't see anything else, we'll move to adjourn. All right. Let's adjourn.